With the tragic training accident in late March 2025 involving 4 American soldiers, there have been many comments on our video asking why US troops are in the country in the first place. We're guessing that many people living in these countries already know why, but it seems like a good opportunity to explain the recent history of American deployments to Lithuania. So it seemed to begin in April 2014. It was at this time that 600 soldiers from the 173rd Infantry Brigade Combat Team Airborne, based in Italy, were repositioned to 4 countries: Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. With 150 soldiers in each country, it was agreed that these would be rotational deployments, with the Pentagon saying that they would be sustained until further notice. Specific to Lithuania, it was reported that they were soldiers from Bravo Company of the 1st Battalion of the 503rd Infantry Regiment of the 173rd Airborne Brigade. According to a Politico report at the time, the paratroopers took weapons and ammunition for infantry exercises. US President at the time Barack Obama said that the army deployments were a way to show America's European allies, as well as Moscow, the level of its concern with Russian aggression and the annexation of Crimea. "We take our obligations very, very seriously on the continent of Europe," a Pentagon spokesperson said at the time. At the end of June 2014, the paratroopers departed Lithuania after spending a few months training with Lithuanian soldiers. American and Lithuanian soldiers worked together in performing airborne operations, including an airfield seizure, air defense artillery training, demolition, and special weapons training. Each force also trained together on each other's weaponry, tactical vehicles, and in-the-field operations, and learned from each other's tactics. It was then reported that soldiers from the 91st Cavalry Regiment, 173rd Airborne Brigade, based in Grafenwöhr, Germany, were sent as replacements. The American presence would continue for a few more years, and a company-size unit of around 200 US troops were stationed in Lithuania between 2014 and 2017. However, this rotational unit was later withdrawn when the German-led NATO battalion was deployed in the country, a force that continues to be stationed in Lithuania to this day. From reporting, it looks like there was a reduced American presence in Lithuania between 2017 and much of 2019. A New York Times article from January 2017 did say that dozens of United States Special Operations Forces were deployed to the Baltics to support the training and resolve of troops. We also found an article from 2018 which talks about members of the 1st Territorial Unit of Lithuania's KASP training with US Army Green Berets from the 20th Special Forces Group Airborne. One soldier by the name of Corporal Mantas, assigned to Lithuania's 1st Territorial Unit, was quoted as saying, "The goal is to work together with the US Special Forces. We share tactical techniques and procedures to ensure we can better work together. If we were to work with a Special Forces unit again in the future, it'll be much easier to understand them during operations in the field." We also found this 2020 video posted on the Marines website showing US Special Forces training and mentoring operators of the Lithuanian State Border Guard Service's Special Task Unit in small unit tactics. But large-scale US troop deployment would only take place once again from October 2019 and on. As we mentioned in a previous video, it was on October 14, 2019 that the first troops of a battalion-sized unit arrived in Lithuania. The more than 500 US Army soldiers were part of a larger long-term deal between the United States and Lithuania, and Lithuania's defense minister had this to say at the time: "We have sought for a larger long-term US military involvement in Lithuania and the region consistently and patiently. Therefore, the deployment of the US Army Battalion for a longer period of time is good and awaited news, and a result of our efforts and investment. The US forces are a vital factor of deterrence, so it'll contribute to NATO efforts in the Baltic region." This larger deployment was reportedly enabled by Lithuania's investments into the training infrastructure in Pabradė and other places, as well as the efforts of the logistical support personnel of the Lithuanian Armed Forces in solving all the practical issues related to the deployment and presence of US troops in Lithuania. An analysis piece from the Polish organization Center for Eastern Studies says that the presence of the armored battalion in Lithuania stems not only from US calculations, but also from intensive diplomatic efforts made by the government since 2017. Quoting one portion of the article, it says, "Vilnius used all available channels to expand contacts within Trump's administration, the US Armed Forces, the Congress, and US think tanks. It pushed intensively for the expansion of US-Lithuanian military cooperation and the presence of the US forces on Lithuanian territory to complement the German-led NATO battle group in the country. The article somewhat suggests that the off-the-record price of this American commitment was the purchase of American arms and defense equipment. It notes that between 2017 and 2020, over €360 million was spent on Black Hawk helicopters, Joint Light Tactical Vehicles, and Javelin missiles. But going back to the deployment, the unit that arrived in October 2019 was the 1st Armored Battalion of the 9th Regiment, 1st Division, based at Fort Hood in Texas, and these troops brought over heavy equipment including approximately 30 Abrams tanks and over 20 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, among other vehicles. This expanded US presence has been continuing ever since, and Lithuania's Ministry of National Defense often makes an announcement whenever a rotation of soldiers takes place. The most recent rotation, at the time of making this video, came in January 2025. The Ministry of Defense states, "The 11th US Rotational Battalion that kicked off the tour of duty in Pabrade today demonstrates a lasting and strong support to our national and regional security. 2 battalions from the 3rd Infantry Division will spend 9 months in Lithuania training with Lithuanian colleagues and other allies." The outgoing was the 2nd Battalion 8th Cavalry Regiment and the 1st Battalion 82nd Field Artillery Regiment. Replacing them was the 3rd Battalion 69th Armour Regiment and the 1st Field Artillery Battalion 41st Field Artillery Regiment. It was this rotation that sadly lost 4 service members during a training exercise when their M88A2 Hercules sank in a swamp. In case you haven't yet heard, it took several days to pull out the vehicle and the bodies of 3 service members were found inside. The 4th body was found outside of the vehicle, but submerged in the swamp. With some wondering how this could have happened, we can see here how some crew members can be positioned partially outside to have a better view.
So here in Lithuania and Pabrade in general, it's very woody. There's more swamps, there's more sinkholes. The ground's just going to fall out from underneath you and your tank might get stuck.
But getting back to the main topic, US troop deployments to the Baltics are not limited to Lithuania. In February 2022, in the days after Russian forces launched their full-scale invasion of Ukraine, hundreds of troops were deployed to Latvia to provide reassurance. It was more difficult for us to find clear information on a regular American presence in Latvia, but we did find video of a change of command ceremony for an American unit at Camp Adazi. And so it appears that there is some regular US presence here as well. Somewhat recently, we've seen artillery units from the 1st Cavalry Division in this country. In Estonia, battalion-sized Allied units have rotated in southern Estonia since the spring of 2022, after the start of the full-scale war in Ukraine. The first 2 rotations were manned by units from the United Kingdom, but those were followed by consecutive rotations from the United States. Prior to 2022, smaller-sized deployments of US troops were stationed in the country. In February 2025, the 7th Cavalry 5th Squadron became the 5th US Army unit rotation in Estonia, cooperating with the Estonian Defence Forces 2nd Infantry Brigade and Estonian Defence League to ensure the safety in the region. We'll definitely take a closer look at US deployments to Latvia and Estonia in future videos, so be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. What do you think about the presence of US forces in Lithuania and the other Baltic nations? Do you think that this may change in the future? Let us know what you think by leaving a comment.